Tuesday edition of the Fenway Rundown podcast. I'm Chris Cotillo here with Sean McAdam. The Red Sox are home, so are we for now. Red Sox will be in New York for the weekend starting on Thursday. Big four-game series, big eight-game road trip to New York and Baltimore. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that, but we will first look back at what has transpired in the few days since we last recorded. Red Sox are four-fifths of the way through a homestand against the Marlins and the Orioles. It has been fine. 2-2. The Red Sox, as we record this, are, I guess, somewhat surprisingly, losers of 7 of 11. We talked about that trip to Houston and San Diego. The sky isn't falling by any means. I think, we have seen some of the holes in the roster that we've talked about be exposed the last few days and some patched in other ways. So, obviously Rogers pitched super well last night. The Sunday loss was a bad one. Any overall concerns here, or is it just, it is what it is?
Well, I think the back end of the bullpen, not necessarily the high leverage guys that you're
Yeah.
going to be relying on. Aroldis Chapman, I understand that Garrett Whitlock gave up an important run on Sunday that ultimately came back to impact the outcome of that one. But let's face it, Whitlock has been very good all year. Everyone's allowed one inning in which they give up a run and things get a little tighter. But the issue has really been their low leverage guys, whether it's a big lead, a 3-run lead on Saturday that they couldn't protect, that forced them to use Aroldis Chapman and took Chapman out of availability for Sunday, or Monday, where you're down 2-0 late in the game and trying to keep it close for a late inning comeback, and instead, two guys, Moran and later Jordan Hicks, extend that lead for the opposition and kind of send the game out of reach. So, some bullpen failings, I think, and we're starting to see some reconfiguring of that bullpen starting last night. You and Chris Smith reported that Brennan Bernardino would be brought back and that Moran would be optioned back to Worcester. That makes sense. I would expect there could be other moves in the coming days, but there are a lot of arms out there in that bullpen that I'm afraid the Red Sox can't trust very much at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, as we talked about the other day, Chapman has been awesome. Whitlock, as you mentioned. Beyond that, Justin Wilson has been really good in his role. Steven Matz is a guy that they acquired to trust. So you get four guys, but three lefties. If you add Slayton to that mix, which they should in about a week to 10 days as he starts a rehab assignment today, then you have, five. But beyond that, I think it's kind of like, you got to ride the hot hand, and they'll have 6 weeks now to figure out before the postseason starts who those guys are going to be. Is it Weissert after he's been, on the team in an important role all year? Is it Bernardino, who had a really good April, an excellent May, an excellent July, and a terrible June, and was overworked? Is it somebody like Sandlin or Kelly or Cooper Criswell in a short
Chris
stint, or
Murphy.
Chris Murphy? We talked about Tolley. I mean, it's just they got some arms to figure out. And, look, we covered a team in 2018 where Ryan Brazier, none of us had ever heard of, and the president of baseball operations never learned how to pronounce his name, and he was still a huge part of that team. You think about the Brandon Workmans coming out of nowhere, and even Whitlock in 21, and, they get back to Joe Kelly in 2018, right? He wasn't originally on the roster and then was dominant. So guys obviously fluctuate. I just think at this point, it was, I think they kind of hit the wall in terms of that depth because of just the timing. I mean, the deadline and the roster moves they had to make around that deadline, with some guys hurt, Guerrero on the IL, Kelly on the IL, Nick Birdie, who they DFA'd, on the IL. And when they acquired May and Matz, they had to send some guys down, Bernardino being one, Criswell being another. Kelly was optioned. And so there's a 15-day period where if nobody gets hurt, you get to call up guys that are probably not at the top of your list by the rule. And that's why we've seen Isaiah Campbell, why we've seen Giovanni Moran, why we've seen, some of these kind of weird call-ups is because they didn't have as much flexibility. Now, Bernardino eligible to come back, and he is. Kelly in the same boat. Murphy in a couple weeks will be as well. So, I think they just have run into a period of kind of awkwardness here. With that being said, there's still some spots you'd like to upgrade. I think we can safely say, that Campbell spot is going to go to, eventually Slayton, but somebody, else could step up there. And I think just the interesting thing here is, do you carry, Jordan Hicks on the roster? In October, you don't have to. But can they deal with this for another 6 weeks? He's got a 7+ ERA. He's under control at like 11 million a year AAV for not just 26 but also 27. To me, it's kind of a dead spot. You're not a bad team that can let this guy work things out at the big league level and kind of torpedo games in different ways. The saving grace, I guess, for them is in 10, 11 days, they get that extra roster spot. It's a tough, awkward situation, though, to have that guy making a lot of money under control. We know how he got here, and every Smitty headline that says from the Rafael Devers trade 2+ months later. But it's like he's non-competitive. I don't want to hear that he's getting close. He's been terrible.
Yeah, and you mentioned the 7 ERA. That would seem to suggest how bad he's been. And yet, the stat that really shines a light on his issues is the whip, which is 2.
Yeah,
That's not good. If you are allowing an average of 2 base runners per inning, then you're in a lot of trouble with the amount of contact you're giving up, the command and control issues that lead to walk and hit batsmen. I mean, how many hit batsmen does this guy have in 2 months out of the Red Sox bullpen? It just seemed not even 2 months. It just seems
yeah,
like every other outing he's plunking somebody and putting somebody on base. And it doesn't matter that he throws 101 because he doesn't throw enough strikes to make that swing and miss be a big part of his game. And last night, a ringing double, a hit by pitch, and a wild pitch. And all of a sudden, you've got two guys in scoring position where a routine ground ball up the middle scores 2 runs and puts the game further out of reach. That's a much different game if it's 4-1 going into the bottom of the ninth. And indeed, they scored twice. Who knows if that had been the case if the game were a little closer? You can't predetermine that kind of thing. But you also can't be giving them additional runs where you're trying to keep it close late in games. It's hard to hide him. You certainly don't trust him in high leverage spots. And if he can't keep the game where it is when he comes in when you're down by 3, then what role is he serving here?
yeah. And I think a big part of not this didn't come into play last night, but you saw, you know, the Saturday Sunday thing going to Chapman so many extra times, like he has been elite, and that was with a capital E, and we have acknowledged that throughout the season. And there has been no blip. It has been basically perfect from day one. He's also 37, and it's late August, and you need him for October probably. Like, they're not going to push him. They're not going to give him 3 days in a row. They're not going to go more than an inning,
Not
and
in
they're
August anyway. I can
right,
see them doing it in September in the final couple weeks when
right,
you're really in crunch time and trying to solidify
yeah.
seeding and clinch a playoff spot, but not in August. And
But
people are,
just the
well, he only threw 4 pitches the day before. It has nothing to do with the number of pitches in the appearance. It's getting up, throwing, getting hot
yeah.
3 days in a row, which doesn't make sense for somebody who's 37.
And look, that is, that's you just hope if you're the Red Sox that those extra appearances don't come back and bite him if he hits the wall on September 15th. There's nothing to say that he will. Again, he's literally had no blips all year, but we just talked about the volatility of these guys. This is a guy who's been volatile throughout his career. You can see the walks starting to pile up at any time. Again, has not happened this year, but you just don't want those extra outings to come into play. And he's pitched when he hasn't, like 5 times in the last 3 or 4 weeks. Alcala got himself DFA'd because he couldn't, be the guy to hand the ball off or just finish a game in blowouts. And now, we've seen obviously Campbell do it on Saturday in a big way. Hicks has a couple times. So that's a concern. And I think, again, at the end of the day, the trust tree, Chapman and Whitlock, Slayton, Matz, and Wilson, that's a good base of 5. but it doesn't get you all the way there, especially, as we talk about questions when it comes to, the rotation and Walker Bueller's spot and all that stuff heading into tonight too.
Yeah, and I don't think it's asking too much to have the low leverage guys be in a situation where they can get three outs faster than the other team can get three runs.
Yep.
And that's what you are asking Isaiah Campbell to do the other day. A three-run lead really should not be a difficult thing to navigate. You should be able to get three outs before they start to put together a rally and get it closer. And he was unable to do that. Nobody's talking about having him be a high leverage guy to come in with men on base or a one-run lead or the tying run on third base. That's the job of Whitlock and Chapman and Wilson. But you should be able to go out and get through an inning without giving up runs, or at least giving up multiple runs as he did and cost them the game.
And this is what, I've been pounding this drum. Negativity, sure. This is a team that's heading for the playoffs and they've pitched well, on balance all year. But the pitching depth is thin. Like, it's a huge concern. You can't have somebody important, get hurt down the stretch. We've seen, as we talked about, Crochet, Bayo, and Giolito. May has been now good in two straight outings. Bueller, we've talked about that at length. Harrison and Criswell, those are, not perfect options to step in. There's some upside with both. On the bullpen side, one of these dominoes falls. If Justin Wilson runs out of gas here, there's insert player A, right? It's just there's not that huge base of depth to draw from, and we've seen that. That's why guys like Campbell and Moran and some of these guys have been on the roster the last few weeks. So it continues to be a concern. It's basically about getting to the finish line at this point. The bullpen has been, when you need it to be, again, because of Chapman and Whitlock and Weisert's first half and Bernardino's good months, and Wilson, and what Matz has given you in a small sample. The bullpen has been really, really good. No one's going to remember that if it falters down the stretch here.
Yeah,
And that's just the
and the
reality of
bullpen
it.
has been very good. The game that got away from them Sunday, um, going into that game, they were 56-1 in games in which they led after 8 innings. Now, that is
Mm-hmm.
a direct testament to the effectiveness of Aroldis Chapman, who has only two blown saves all year, who's given up, I think, either two or three homers all year.
Yeah.
He's been A plus, much better than anyone could have anticipated. He's been as good as any closer in the game, go around the game, pick out the big names. He's been as good as anybody. So this is not on Chapman and it's not on Whitlock. It's having guys that you can trust to give them nights off when they should be rested and not pressed into duty.
So the Red Sox did make a move on the other side of the roster. We talked about this. We recorded on Thursday. Went up on Friday, but we recorded it like 10 seconds after this happened. So we touched on it a little bit. Nathaniel Lowe was released right before we recorded. By Saturday, it was abundantly clear the Red Sox were interested. And by Sunday night, they had a deal and we're bringing him to town. Um, you can really talk about, you can say the phrase no risk or nothing to lose. That's truly what applies here. I mean, the guy's going to be making like 250,000 for the rest of the year.
Not
There's no
even.
financial risk. You see what he can give you in a pinch hit at bat last night, and it'll be starting, I'm sure, tonight against a righty in Sagano. The numbers suggest that he is, especially against righties, an upgrade over Toro. The track record suggests that there is still a ceiling there, and this is a guy who's done it before. There is nothing to dislike about this move in my mind, and it's what, you put yourself in a position for when these things to come up to be an attractive spot for a guy. They were. He came almost immediately, and we'll see. He hits I think it's just because they look alike build wise, but I think it's some big moments Travis Shaw gave them in 2021 with that grand slam on Labor Day, and obviously Iglesias that year he was not eligible for the postseason. He was excellent down the stretch. This is you see what you got for 6 weeks, and this is a guy that I gotta say, like, writing about him the last couple days. I don't know what it was. Maybe it's all the lows and all the guys on Tampa and being confused about who's who. His numbers, not this year, but before, were kind of better than I thought. He's a very accomplished Gold Glover, Silver Slugger, World Series champion. So why not? Why the hell not is
Yeah,
the answer, is the question there.
nothing to lose. The question I have is, And, they had the ability to clear an active roster spot by DFAing Ali Sanchez to make room for the addition of Lowe. But I was a little surprised that Alex Cora indicated that Abraham Toro will continue to play first base against left-handed pitching. I don't get that one, frankly. I could see a strict platoon of Romy Gonzalez and Lowe at first. You've got a guy who's crushed lefty pitching this year with an OPS greater than 1,000, talking about Gonzalez, and a
Mhm.
guy who has had some past success in Lowe. Make that be your first base situation. You want to give Gonzalez a game here or there at second base to make sure that Rafaela isn't playing there every day. Okay, that's fine. I don't think that Abraham Toro, as much as he contributed earlier and has had a nice season for them in terms of what they had expected and what they actually got, we're talking about a guy who's hit under 200 since late June, early July. This is
Yeah.
not a little dip. This is not a slump. This is a protracted downturn in performance stretched out for much of the summer. And to say that, well, he's still going to be in there against lefties as a switch hitter hitting right-handed, I don't understand that. They have the ability to have a Gonzalez low platoon at first, occasionally move Gonzalez over to play second base and let Lowe either face some lefties or do get creative there. But I don't understand Toro being guaranteed some at bats going forward, given how poorly he's performed for the last 2+ months.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the Ref Snyder injury kind of opened a path there where they weren't gonna, have to lop him off the roster yesterday. Ref Snyder and Sanchez obviously being there. I think obviously down in September, if Christian Campbell's the better option there, though you still kind of want him playing every day, so there's no perfect option there. I was kind of surprised with you, but Toro is going to be, I think, on the team here for the next couple weeks or 10 days while Ref Snyder's out. So, I think it's just about getting Rafaela, still some outfield exposure, making sure he's still playing in the outfield and having Romy play second against lefties. That's seems to be kind of the calculus there. Obviously, Ref Snyder out of the mix. We don't know about Wilyer Abreu at this point if he's going to go on the IL or not. So a lot of moving parts. Um, you know, you start wondering with that, like, do they hate this Rafaela at second base thing? Are they starting to think that it's not a good idea? I know you don't love it. And maybe that's why, Romy's going to be playing there more. I don't know. There are a lot of moving parts when it comes to this, but I do think the fact that they had, they needed to put Ref on the IL yesterday and they had that spot for Sanchez saved Toro. Um, and
Yeah, however,
for now,
temporary,
right.
because it certainly looks like, although things could get worse in the next couple of days if Abreu's calf
Yeah,
strain does not show any improvement and they have to, I mean, as it is, they're playing a man short here. He's not available,
right.
even though they have not placed him on the IL yet. Maybe they won't have to. There was some encouraging news that they thought he was getting better. And if they can just stay away from him for a couple of days, I'm sure he
Well,
will not be available tonight. You got the off day on Wednesday. That gives him a stretch of 3 straight days where he's not being asked to play. Maybe by Thursday, when they go into Yankee Stadium, he's in the clear and you can use him as you would like, which is playing right field most times. But it just seems like the roster management issues are catching up with them, and they're not always putting themselves in the best position the last few days with their utilization of those bench spots.
yeah, I mean, that like you have guys in AAA so you can maximize your roster on certain nights. I mean, God bless them. A playoff team having Nate Eaton hit leadoff on August 19th is just a weird look. Like I know he was good against Washington when he did it in Colorado and that stretch when he came up and produced there and he's speedy and all that stuff, but like it's just not what you'd expect
Yeah,
at
I
this
agree.
point. So, but Lowe, I think a good move, one that could definitely pay off down the stretch. Red Sox and Yankees pitching probables are not out quite yet because teams like to hold that advantage, and they're just going to throw a pitcher out, and you get to see who it is when he trots out to the mound these days. But the Red Sox will face two lefties in the Bronx, projected between Fried and Rodon on Friday and Sunday. Heel and Warren on the other in the other two nights, according to the Fangraphs projection there. So you can maybe kind of manipulate that a little bit with Abreu. Have him not play tonight. You can get away with that because of all the outfielders you have. Wednesday off. Maybe he plays Thursday and then has Friday off, plays Saturday, has Sunday off like he would because he can't hit lefties and they won't play him there. Obviously, it's going to be some eating time because Ref Snyder's not in the mix, at least through the weekend. So it'll be a different looking roster. I think they've been so good against lefties, but once you lose Ref Snyder there, it's a little tougher, obviously. Duran has not been good against lefties.
Yep.
Anthony's been good about both sides, but you'd rather have him face a righty.
And
Um,
you do not want to have Yoshida in the outfield
right.
at Yankee Stadium because that would be left field, and that's a lot of ground to cover. And we know that he's not a great defender out there, so he's kind of limited to DH only. The outfield isn't much of an option for him in the short term. So a couple of these nagging injuries are coming at a tough time for them, where they're going on the road for 8 straight games and led by those four in New York, which are going to be hugely impactful. A team that they are tied neck and neck with, along with Seattle. It's basically a three-team horse race with 6 weeks to go, and all those head-to-head games are not only going to determine seeding and everything else, but you think about tiebreakers at the end of the year. The Red Sox are in pretty good position, having won 5 of the first 6 with the Yankees. So I think 2 more wins gives them the season series. The Yankees come back and visit Fenway in September, and with another win, they can clinch a tie for the season series, and then you get into some complicated tiebreakers for division record and all that. But there's dual significance and importance over the next 4 or 5 days to at least split that series on the road, and then you'd like to see them go in and take 3 out of 4 in Baltimore.
Yep, your standings check up because we did not do this yet. They remain five back in the division. The Yankees have won three in a row, so the Yankees are at 67 and 57, effectively tied. The Red Sox have played two more games. The Yankees are at the same spot in the division, 5 games back of Toronto. And the wild card, same record as the Mariners and the same effective record as the Yankees. Guardians, 3 back. The Royals are 4 back. The Royals and the Rangers are 6 back after cooling off. The Royals, I think, are a team with some talent. They can pitch. That might scare you a little bit, but there still is that built-in kind of gap there before you get into the contenders pushing. Well,
And
go ahead.
and those teams are now where the Red Sox were about a year ago,
Right.
where they're hanging around the periphery of the wild card race. But when you think about the number of teams in front of you and needing them all to lose while you win to make up ground and get back into that playoff structure, as they say in hockey, then that's not an easy thing to do. There, you can't rule them out, but I would say that being 3 or 4 back with 6 weeks to go sounds a lot better than it actually is because
Yeah.
of the dynamic of having to overtake 3 teams.
Right. And we'll get into this when we get into this, but I think the Red Sox will very badly want to avoid visiting Seattle for a best of three against that pitching staff. But that's a conversation for another day. Let's wrap with this today. On Sunday, I think. Yes. The Red Sox announced that they are that Marcelo Mayer is having season-ending wrist surgery. The anti-inflammatory shot did not work. He was not pain-free, and he is now shut down for the final 6 weeks here. That injury happened in late July, so he was already really kind of missed a month, and it'll be 2+ months at the end on the ledger for him. That has been a case that has that's been what's happened every year, and so
4 years in a row, his season has been cut
Yeah.
short by second half injuries.
And so, you know, I think that, the offensive numbers to me for this stretch of 44 or 45 games he played in the big leagues, they look, I think, a little worse than the eye test would suggest. Like, I think his approach is good, and he definitely had some slumping points, but he could hit, at times. The defense was really, really good. Um, I think with him, you're at the point, and this is not an insult to him because injuries are unavoidable and all that stuff, but you're at the point where, penciling him into a position to start next year, saying he's your starting second baseman or, trading Story to clear the path. I
Or
mean,
if you don't retain
right.
Bregman, the third baseman.
Right. I mean, I think it's a little too early to give him a position like you're going to give Anthony one, And so that I think is the big takeaway here. The other thing, on the day Roman Anthony signed, everybody jumped to go to Marcelo Mayer's locker and say, "What about you? Have they talked about you?" And we've heard that the injuries are a real concern. Roman Anthony's a guy who's been very healthy in his career. Campbell didn't have any time to get hurt in the minors, so before they extended him. But I think that even for one of these pre-arb commitments where it's all risk for the player and no risk for the team, I bet in kind of the way that they talked about Casas in years past, coming off injuries, they are not going to really be aggressive on doing this with Marcelo Mayer as much upside as there is there.
Yeah, and there remains great upside. We saw his ability to play several different infield positions and play them all well. That speaks to his versatility, to his athleticism, and that's a strong point going forward. And we also think that he's going to hit, even though he struggled against lefties and had some ups and downs, as you referenced. But you can't help but wonder how much has he lost in development time by missing the amount of playing time in games he has in each of the last, what will now be 4 years. It's not just valuable time against big league pitching and getting more acclimated up at the big league level. It's what he lost in Portland a couple of years ago. It's what he lost in Worcester last year. You're talking about over the three previous years, almost a full year, because each was multiple months.
Yep.
Whether it was 6 weeks or 2 months at the end of the year where he didn't play anymore, that's a valuable amount of development time that he didn't get to access and realize. And you wonder what that does to his development once he does stay healthy and get on that track at the big league level. We don't know where he's going to fit in going forward. It would seem second base is the most logical spot for him, although, a lot could happen. Bregman could opt out and he could be their third baseman on opening day next year. I don't think they're going to try to trade Trevor Story, but if they were, he could go in penciled in as the expected starting shortstop, but there's a lot you still don't know there. You still feel good about what he offers you and what he's going to ultimately bring because he's shown those flashes. He's shown the athleticism to handle all those spots. And when he's been healthy, he has hit and produced at the minor league level, and we saw bits of it at the major league level, but there's still some uncertainty surrounding him.
Yeah, and I think that it just shows like this is what the reality of prospects and young players are. When you look at the big three from opening day to this point, as we approach August 20th, you have one who's become a star in Anthony. You have one who has been in AAA for 2 months in Campbell, and you have one who had a season-ending injury, right? Like it's just and I know the Red Sox know this. I think this is more of a resetting of expectations for fans, like to expect at the beginning of the year. Well, by the end of the year, these three guys will be lineup staples every day. As we sit here, they're at a 1/3 hit rate. I mean, it's not to say Campbell didn't help the team early, and it's not to say Meyer didn't help the team in the middle, but Campbell's future this year remains to be seen. Anthony's a staple for sure. And Meyer, just again, there's no such thing on these prospects. And you've talked about that a lot.
It's a
It's just another
reminder
reminder.
that no matter how well regarded young players are, that you can't take anything for granted and they don't just step in and take off immediately. Anthony
Right.
didn't. It took him a while. Even now, the power has really not been shown at the big league level with I think 4 home runs over the span of a couple of months. He surely is capable of more than that, but hasn't done it. So even in a best case scenario, uh, he hasn't fully realized his potential right away. To
which
say
is
nothing of the
should be
guy who's
scary
like,
for the rest of the league.
right, right. The ceiling is still extraordinarily high. And I think people expect Campbell's going to survive what's been a difficult year for him, and that Meyer still has a lot to offer when he's healthy. But as I said, it's a reminder that this is not a slam dunk, even if you're talking about three guys who are top 20 prospects in the industry, not their organization, in the industry. There's still some uncertainty and some things that have to be proven out.
Yep, for sure. Well, the Red Sox back in action tonight after this rolls. Walker Buehler takes the mound at Fenway against Sugano from the Orioles. Then an off day tomorrow and a big series in the Bronx this weekend. I will be there, and so will the Fenway Rundown.